You've landed at Spark Launch, the guide star for embracing what it means to be neurodiverse. I'm Mike Cornell, joined by CEO of Spark Launch, Chaya. Here, we navigate mental health triumphs and tribulations from all across the spectrum, charting a course through the shared experiences that unite us, and discovering how to embody the unique strengths within neurodivergent and neurotypical alike, igniting your spark and launching it into a better tomorrow. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
I'm Chaya.
So I think we have all heard the phrase or been told it, maybe said it ourselves, that everything happens for a reason. It's always intended to be nice and comforting of a sentiment, but there is, at least for me, something deeper that can be a bit harmful for our mindsets, I guess you could put it. I know, for one, I won't say a love-hate relationship with the phrase. It's more of like a straight up hate. And I don't know how you feel about that particular phrasing.
Yeah, I definitely don't hate it, but I'm very intrigued with your passion towards hating it. And you picked the topic, Mike, and I just want to dig deeper into understanding why there's so much emotion towards that phrase. And I just want to let you know that it's valid. Your emotions are completely valid, and you are entitled to feel that way. It's just my curiosity. I want to dig deeper if you don't mind me going that route.
Of course. I mean, it's all philosophical ideas, right? So there's no real right or wrong way of looking at it. It's just all purview. It's all parallax. For me, I'm very pro self-agency and individual power. Like, I'm not not a religious person. I'm an atheist. I don't have any real problem with spirituality or anything. I actually think it's fascinating in a lot of ways. Though it's funny, I do really like LaVeism Satanism, which is just fun atheism, which is all that is. But it's about the strength and power comes from the individual person and kind of embracing that, and everyone kind of their own personal God. And I kind of feel that way, like everyone's their own sort of planet in the cosmos. And I also believe very strongly in chaos theory, that the universe is a series of chaotic events that, it's like how people kind of misinterpret Murphy's Law, that kind of thing. It's like, no, it's everything that can happen will happen because it is an infinite amount of possibilities of happenings. So that being said, everything happens for a reason. I dislike for a couple different facets. Number one is it removes agency, I think, from the person. It both tries to put a positive spin on negative events in a way that I do think can be toxic. I do not like toxic positivity. I think it creates a lot of shame towards whenever negative events happen or problems happen. And when you kind of say that, well, this happened for a reason because it led to this, it's taking what you did from that negative event away from you, where if you reacted a certain way to a negative event and it led to something positive, then, it's a bit like, it's always weird that at Christmas time, for people who celebrate Christmas, that's always like the best gifts come from Santa Claus. It's always weird when you stop and think, like, why don't the parents reverse it so that way the lamer gifts come from Santa and the better gifts come from the parents? It's always strange to me. But it's kind of like the same deal, where you're saying that everything is kind of like out of your control. So you just roll with the bad things that happen because maybe something good will happen because the bad thing happened. Well, that's removing your agency. That's removing your kind of responsibility to your own actions, that you need to look at what happened and see what led you here, what you can do going forward from here. And the same thing if a positive event happened. What did you do that made this take place? This was not like bestowed upon you for unrelated reasons to yourself. Maybe your skill led you here. Maybe you taking a chance and speaking to somebody led you here. I'm not a big, it's the one door closes, one door opens sort of thing, which to me is a little bit like a nice softer version of everything happens for a reason, because it doesn't imply that there is a grand purpose to any events, just like you just acknowledge that a door is closed and then you can kind of go open another one. So to me, that's a little bit more neutral. But for everything that happens for a reason, you're really, again, taking away that agency from the person, in my opinion. And you're saying that you aren't in control of when things happen. And you also need to just kind of accept when bad things happen because, A, there's probably some sort of reason it's happening, which I think is shitty. When something really horrible happens, a violent act, to say that, oh, well, it must have happened for a reason, that doesn't help the person. And I really don't like that, even if something good eventually comes from it. I think of like the Amber Alert that happens with missing children. Like that occurred because that family fought for an alert system after their daughter went missing and was killed. Well, imagine someone saying them like, well, everything happens for a reason. So your daughter was murdered for the sake of there being an Amber Alert. Like that, when you put it in that context, it's really stupid and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like you can make a good thing out of something. And that should be something we always strive for, is making something good out of the bad. And I don't like taking the ability of a person to do that away from them and say that it's a snowball effect. Like you don't have any control. You're just going down the hill.
I have to say, I agree with you 100%. Because where do I start? First of all, the universe. I love that language. I am also not religious at all. I don't see color. I don't see gender. I don't see nationality. But I am spiritual in the sense that we are all part of the universe. And we are, so universe is not outside of us, it's inside, because we are also part of it. And what you say right now, what you just told me, has an impact on me. And in that way, we all impact one another. And there are aspects in the universe that we are not aware of. So I'm even open to concepts such as spirits and the unknown, basically, because what we know in our bodies, we have 5 sense organs, right? We have the eyes, we have the nose, mouth, skin, and ears, and then we have the sixth sense. It's that intuition, it's that feeling, it's that something doesn't feel right, doesn't feel wrong. I mean, whatever. And the messages and dreams and things like that. So there's so many things that are happening outside of our body, and we are all interacting knowingly or unknowingly. And so I'm very open and intrigued with that concept. And so that's my understanding of spirituality. And also we have responsibility, as you said, as you called it, agency within ourselves. As stuff happens to us, we are responsible with what we do with that information. And so things happen. And just to say it happens for a reason is wrong. Just to make that statement is insensitive and doesn't take that person's journey into consideration. And we have zero clue of what that other person's gone through. Like, I know a little bit about you, Mike, but I have no right to make any statement like that about you, right? So I think, but although the intention of the other person making that statement might be to lessen the trauma that the other person is going through, that is what's happening there. Maybe their intention is to make the other person feel better, but it is insensitive and not required. It's like summing up this whole lot of incidents, maybe also brings up childhood incidents, what's happening now, and summing it all into this one statement, kind of just saying, oh, yeah, it all happened for a reason. That is insensitive. But there are messages for us when things happen, and especially when negative things happen. It's a message for us. So it's important that we sit with that and experience that, and what we do with that is up to us, and whether we want to move forward, whether we decide to build thick walls around us, only we would know. Only that person experiencing that would know. But it is important to experience that and not ignore it and not shove it under the carpet, not put it away. Because if we put it away, it's going to come back. It's going to come back days, years, decades. It'll always come back. So I think we've come to this planet in this lifetime to overcome the challenges, whatever challenges we have. So the scenarios happen to us so that we evolve. That's my theory. Again, it's all coming from my life experiences and my journey till this point.
I agree 100%. I'm reminded of, in my suicidal days, one of the worst things anybody could say to me, and this goes for, I think, pretty much everybody who deals with suicidality, is look at everything you have. People will be sad when you're gone. It's all meant to be nice, but all because you meant it to be nice and helpful doesn't mean that it actually is. It's actually the exact opposites of nice and helpful. So the phrase "everything happens for a reason" works the same way for me. It's invalidating in that way. It kind of tells you not to take a lesson away, to not try to break a cycle that's happening. You know, when something crappy happens and something good happens right afterwards, and it's tenuously connected, you take away from it that, oh, the bad thing happens so the good thing can happen, and then, hey, the bad thing ends up happening again. That's probably because you didn't examine why it happened in the first place. And it took me, for a lot of things in my life, finally stopping. And not that I ever believed the whole "everything happens for a reason" thing, but it took me stopping and really examining what I was doing to fix I don't want to use fix, mend the problems within me. I'm reminded of the Japanese art of repairing ceramics with gold. You keep the cracks, you let them stand out, but you repair them with gold. And I think we have a tendency, especially like very positivity culture, and yes, admittedly, a lot of religious culture tends to force a positive spin that removes the cracks or tells you not to look at the cracks, or if it's cracked, throw it away and replace it. But there is a lot of beauty in the cracks, including the cracks of the universe. It's not nihilistic to say that we're insignificant. It's actually very beautiful and empowering that we're insignificant. For my friends listening to this is going to date exactly when we were recording this, but I was watching a movie last night. I was rewatching Donnie Darko, and I was kind of texting my friends during it because we were all sort of watching it. And it's a movie you come up with a lot of theories on, like what it's about, what's going on. And, one of the reads I have on it is spoilers for anybody who's never seen Donnie Darko, but it came out in 2000 or something. So, Donnie was supposed to die from a very random, cosmically tragic incident, but instead, through some sort of strange science fiction event, through a odd time warp, he gets thrown into an alternate reality where he didn't die. And the events of that, bad things happen to people around him, people he comes into contact with. It has a negative effect. And he's somebody who is he's afraid of the unknown, of dying alone. He has a very nihilistic view that there's no point to anything. He deals with mental illness. He's likely schizophrenic, and he eventually realizes at the very end that he has to essentially go back, and that the butterfly effect of life, whether he lives or dies, has a greater effect. In this case, you could look at the movie as it's nihilistic that he feels he has to die for there to be positivity in other people's lives. Somebody ends up dying because he survives in this alternate world where she gets to live now. And there's a tragedy around his death, but it's actually a positive thing. He realizes that there is a point in life, even if you die, that life boiled down has an effect on everything around you. And I feel like that way about this like very subject. It is all very chaotic, but it all has a point. It's just a point that you make of it.
Exactly. It's up to us to interpret it and make something out of it. And we have no idea what the other person's going through. And the same incident, if it happens to two different people, they could experience it completely differently. And even though, let's say they're twins, even though they are made up of the same genetics mostly and brought up in the same household, they could experience things completely differently. And it's so important for that aspect because it just tells us we have zero right to make assumptions about another individual. And so I agree with that again, 100%. And I also wanted to, I wrote down a few things. You talked about toxic positivity. It's crucial. And I see that a lot, especially here in the US. I grew up in India and it's like I'm at a midpoint. I lived 25 and a half years there and 25 and a half years here approximately. And I see that a lot here. I've traveled to other countries. I've traveled to Europe, but it's more so in the US. That's my opinion anyways. We somehow have to always smile and just say the right things. So if I were to ask, how's your day? You'll always say it's good, even though you're feeling crappy inside. And I can't even tell from your face because you've been trained not to show it. So you'll always come with a smile. And I would never know. Maybe if you didn't have that smile, maybe I could have asked you, hey, what's wrong, Mike? Why that gloomy face? But somehow here we've been told, I think, to always smile and say it's a good day or talk about the weather because, boy, we don't want to talk about the deep stuff. And that's why we have the show, right? We're going to talk about all the deep layers underneath our feelings. And so I used to tell my colleague before, I didn't know it was called masking. I didn't know the term masking. I didn't know the term neurodivergent. I didn't know any of that. But I used to tell my colleague, I see there's a thick layer. It's like a makeup. It's the Botox. Feels like that when I interact with people here, when I go to a restaurant, because everybody says the same thing. It's scripted, right? It's all scripted. And when I go back to India, I don't see that as much. Just the true nature somehow revealed. I can tell the difference between one person and another immediately. Here, I'm good at it. I can pull out the true essence of that individual, but it takes longer. It takes longer. I didn't know it was masking, but somebody sits with me. Eventually, they're going to tell me the truth. I don't know why, but it happens with me a lot, but it takes longer. It takes longer. I think they somehow feel they can trust me, and they start revealing their true personality, and it's beautiful. I love to see the true individual behind that smile, behind the good day, the weather person, because it's beautiful. There's so much depth. There's so many layers. There's so many intricate things that makes up an individual, and there's so much beauty in it. I love that statement you made about the art with the cracks and the gold covering that. And that's the same principle that I use with my paintings. I learned to paint over my mistakes, and it added texture. It added so much more beauty, the depth, that it's not just one layer, but the marks is what added the beauty. And you want to not mask it, you want to show those layers, because that's what's made an individual who he or she is in that moment. And that's where the beauty is, and that speaks louder than just the fakeness, right? The good words, the right phrases, because people are so focused on the language, the words, the way a person talks, and not the content. And when we talk fearlessly, when we drop into our heart space and reveal the depth, the all those scratches and do-overs and all of that, it shows the beauty. It's so beautiful. And so, yeah, I love that. I love what you said about that, because it took me off on this other journey.
Well, we all mask, as you said, and I'm reminded of, not to talk about a movie again, but my life tends to, my special interest is film. One of my special interests is film. So, and I find a lot in art, but I'm reminded this is less neurodivergency and more mental health. Particularly, this is depression for me. I have always found one of the best, simplest representations of what depression feels like to be in a single scene of an old silent film starring Lon Chaney called The Man Who Laughs. And I've actually brought this up on podcasts before, interestingly enough. So this is always like the well I go to, which is Chaney plays Gwynplaine, who has been, as a child, he was stolen and he was deformed by people, and he has a permanent rictus grin across his face. So right now he's working as part of like a traveling circus. He's being a clown, and it's at the end of the day. There was a performance earlier, and he's just standing in a doorway, and he's watching a bunch of people outside, and they're pointing and they're laughing at him because he's a clown. And one of the other clowns from the act comes up to him, and he's wiping off his makeup, and he goes, "No, Gwynplaine, you're lucky. At the end of the day, you don't have to take off your makeup." And he walks away, and no one takes notice that Gwynplaine is crying. He looks like he's laughing hysterically. He looks like he's so happy that he's making other people laugh at him, but he's crying, and no one notices. And that's what depression is to me. That's how I have always felt, especially as I covered up things with humor and whatever else. Like, that's how I felt. And that's getting into that toxic positivity thing of, how was your day? Fine. Now it's more or less understood that I'm fine is code for I'm barely holding on and I might be gone next week, that sort of thing. And we kind of just accept that as, oh, that's what that's code for. We don't do anything about it. We just accept that's what that's code for. And I hate that. And when it comes to neurodivergency, autistics are there's always a joke that autistics don't understand that you're supposed to just reply with, "Oh, my day's good. I'm good." Because no, if you ask us how we are, we're just going to tell you how we are at that exact moment. We don't get that it's a superficial question that doesn't mean anything. And we're kind of shamed for it. And it's made into a joke. Like, oh yeah, autistics, we're weird because we do this and we don't really understand the social cue. Is it we don't understand the social cue, or is it just because the social cue's stupid? The social cue's damaging and we don't compute with it for that reason. Maybe we're not the weird ones in that regard. Maybe we're the ones who are actually being honest and authentic and doing actual good thing into the universe by just saying, I'm actually having kind of a hard day today. Thank you for asking. You don't have to go deeper into it, but you don't have to be awkward because someone replied to that. And if you want to dig deeper, feel free. If you don't want to dig deeper, just say, "I'm sorry, you're not feeling very good today. That sucks." It's simple. We don't have to go into such complicated terms with it. Just treat each other like we're human beings for once, And I've now moved into like what I do for a living, more or less, because of everything that I've been through in life, doing peer support. And it was things I fell into before I knew what peer support was. I would always be reaching out and using what I went through. I can't tell you how many times I'm not using this metaphorically, talked people off the ledge where a conversation could have gone one way or another, and that person would not be with me anymore. And that had happened numerous times with different people. And I was only able to do that because I've been on the other side of that. I've, 6 times is my number for how many times I've tried. So, and from there, more problems I've had have come up, the struggles I've had being late diagnosed, autistic, the eating disorder I suffered from, just being able to be another man with an eating disorder that another man with an eating disorder can actually talk to was very important to me. And through that, I discovered what peer support was. But it was since I was a child, I always wanted there to be a place or someone who could understand. And I tried to continue to do that until I discovered that, oh, there is actually a space that can be offered for people to do this. And that's what led me to being a peer support specialist and doing groups and doing all this and doing this podcast. And it could be very easily said that, like, well, all that happened for a reason, so you can do this and help other people. And quite frankly, if someone said that to me, I'm going to punch them in the face because, yes, am I helping someone? Yes, I'm very happy to do that. That's what I want to do. That is my purpose right now. I honestly would trade it for not having to go through what I've gone through. It's always the people who, quite frankly, haven't, trigger warning for anybody listening, haven't had a gun in their mouth at any point in their lives who say things like that. I would prefer not to have to know what that tastes like. So I made something out of it. I'm trying to do something that will help other people in regards to that. But do not ever tell me that it happened for a reason.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mike, that you went through that 6 times. I can't even imagine what the circumstances that might have led to those points. Yeah, but nobody has any reason to make a statement like that. So I want to apologize on their behalf.
Thank you.
And I want to get deeper into that. I don't know if today is the day, or maybe we could talk more about suicide and why the neurodivergent mind and how it impacted you and why 6 times. I have so many questions on that. But I wanted to just commend you for now being the person that you didn't have back then. So you are doing things that you didn't get when you were looking for it. But you didn't have to go through all of that to be the person. And I get that point. You could have still helped, still showed up to people, been there without having gone through suicidal attempts 6 times. So making a statement like that, I understand that you didn't have to go through that to be good. But somehow it led you here. And I'm sure you're very grateful that you're here to help people and be there for them. So tell me about the peer support. What does it do? What happens? I'm very intrigued by that.
What draws me to it is I never had much interest in being a therapist or a counselor or anything like that. I don't think I feel like peer support is part of the overall process of it all. It's a different power differential than that. And that's why it interests me more. It's eye to eye. It's level to level. Someone with lived experience. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want someone who knew a lot about what I was going through. I want someone who's gone through what I've gone through and is able to be proof that there's another side, that, the saying is the only way out is through. I want someone who's actually standing outside telling me to come through the tunnel. That's what I want. And that's what peer support is I can be the person that helps guide. I hate that we're called coaches a lot, but we're not really coaches. We don't coach. We help guide, we help facilitate, we help advocate. We're there to just be someone to talk to understand, to hopefully point you in the right direction should you want to. And if you're not ready to be pointed in the right direction and you just need somebody in the meantime until you are ready, we can be that too. We can be anything, you need to be. And I have a particular affinity for support groups. I really like support groups, despite my, ironically, social deficiencies or shyness, as it was called when I was a kid. But I really like the power of support groups because I like the idea of communal problem solving and sharing. There's a lot of power that comes from whenever you share. Right now, I'm doing a support group for men with eating disorders. It's for a nonprofit called Pay What You Can Peer Support. You can find them at paywhatyoucanpeersupport.com. I'm also just a member of their autism group there. It's very helpful to me. It's one of my favorite things to do every single week. Another thing that I have felt, I used to have like this dream. It was more for like mental health when a teenager, but now I've learned so much about neurodivergency over the last several years that it's wide ranging, but specifically for neurodivergence. I had a friend and she worked at this place that it was more or less like a after school getaway for teens who needed either, just support because they didn't have a place to go or they came from a bad home or any number of things. They would just do events and they would have, game nights or whatever, or or people just needed someone to talk to. So it was like a rec center, like very like honed in on this one specific group. And I always thought that was something that I always wanted for people with depression, and now for neurodivergency. And I always wished I could like build a place like that. And of course, building a physical location, very hard. So right now I'm building a virtual space that will be that. If you go to my Instagram page at follows his ghost, you can find the links to it there. It's called Motley Minds. It is what I'm calling a neurodivergent social support club because it is both social club and a peer support group. I want it to function as both. We're not going to just talk about mental health, and it's for the wide range umbrella of neurodivergency. So no matter where you are on the spectrum, what your diagnosis is, even if you're not formally diagnosed, it's there for you. You'll get access to a Facebook group. I plan to expand it out more to maybe doing like a Discord or some other side tangents. Right now it's just going to meet bi-weekly, one group every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. But I hope as the group expands, we'll add more meetings. We'll go to weekly. We'll have like special certain nights, like maybe like a game night or a book club, movie club, any number of things. Let's dive into special interests a lot. There's no reason to mask at this group, and that's what I want. It's no reason to mask. You can be surrounded by everybody. We can all problem solve together and try to build up life skills, and it just feel less alone. And that's what I've wanted as part of being a peer support specialist. And this is what I wanted before I knew what the hell a peer support specialist was or that they existed, which is I just want people to not feel as alone as I always did. From my earliest memories are depression and anxiety and huddling under the desk in my bedroom because I don't know what's wrong with me because I don't know what mental health is yet. I'm like 5 years old. I don't know what's going on in my brain. And I don't want people to feel that way. And I particularly don't think there's a lot of support for neurodivergent individuals who are 18 plus or older, or especially older age groups. You kind of look for resources and you just get a lot of kid stuff, especially with autism. Hell, you can barely get a diagnosis for autism or ADHD if you're an adult. It's kind of treated like, oh, once you get to 18, you just stop being autistic, I guess. You can't find anything if you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s just for some help. So I want to invite people of all those age groups to come in. We're 18 plus. I would like to eventually get to a point where I have a group for under 18, 13 to 18 that is separate from all the adults. But for right now, I want to focus on those older age groups, and I want to have them feel comfortable and have a safe space to share and dive into things. And like I said, not just talk about mental health, because I'm sure it feels like that's all they ever get asked about, or that's all that's on their mind. Maybe you just want to experience your special interest a new way, or share your special interest, or learn somebody else's special interest, or just talk about creative activities, or just joke around. Whatever you want to do that particular week, you're welcome to come and do it. So if you're interested in that group, anybody listening, you can find information there on my Instagram account at follows his ghost. The first meeting is free, so if you just want to try it out, feel free to. And yeah, I'm hoping to expand to a lot more support groups on a wide range of things. And peer support is something that I want to try to advocate for itself as being just as important as having a a counselor or a therapist or a psychiatrist, that it's part of the overall mental health care system. And I'm going to do my best to make it be seen that way.
Wow. Thank you for giving me a glimpse of what that peer support group is. And it's so needed, especially with the neurodivergent community, because we are different and we have a lot of emotions, a lot of thoughts, and they need to be processed and just maybe even spoken, like just get it out of the system. So when you share your experience with another person, it's leaving your body, and maybe you feel lighter just through that experience. And when you create a group like that, you're lending just a year to listen to. And through that experience, it's at least releasing from that individual who's holding it. He or she could be holding it, or they could be holding it for years, right? So the trauma that it's created in the body is somehow lighter now because they've released it. And that is so amazing. So thank you for creating that group. So I'm picturing it more like a buddy. Is it like they're all buddies? They're there just so it feels like two friends talking. Is that how? Okay.
Very much so. Yeah. Very reduced power differential. And that's something I always kind of return to, where we're there just to like sit with you and be with you and offer guidance and, advice if you need it, or just like, hey, this worked for me. Just brainstorm, I guess. Not everything that worked for me is going to work for you, but I can probably help you figure out what's going to work for you. And I probably know some resources that I could share with you that you're welcome to also use. And if you just need someone to vent about who just understands the exact thing you're going through, we can just talk about that. We don't have to try to problem solve today. We can just talk about how much this particular thing hurts.
It's so amazing. And I'm thinking how well it ties to coaching, because the philosophy of coaching is that internal journey that I was talking about. And then the belief is that we have all the answers inside of us, within us, but we can't see it because we have blinders. Incidents that have happened to us would have put those blinders on. And it's so deep rooted that it becomes part of our personality, becomes a part of our subconscious mind. And those patterns that are not actually helping us move forward can be discovered through that internal journey. And when that person sees their own patterns, which are not serving them, basically they are their own obstacles, right? We are our own obstacles because it's not about the other. And that's where our growth is. And then we look at those obstacles and come up with our own solutions, because the solution again is inside of us. We know how to get out of that sharp curve on this climb to Mount Everest. So we know, but we just need somebody with us as we take that journey, the action to move forward. So that's the whole philosophy of coaching. And it goes so well with your peer support group. It's so beautiful that the two of us met. And I don't know where this is going to go, but I love it. And one thought that came to me was you were talking about the 5-year-old boy you were with, having mental health problems and hiding it under the bed. That picture, I'm thinking every 5-year-old must be happy, right? Children are meant to be happy, joyful, playful. I wonder what was going on in that boy's mind. Maybe a little glimpse into that for today, and we can talk about the rest another time.
Constriction, a mental constriction, I guess, just feeling oppressed. Nothing external oppressing me. It's not like something specific was happening where I felt oppressed. I think it's actually kind of a bit of a common feeling. People with mental health struggles, particularly with depression, or you feel like this enveloping shadow around you that is holding you down and choking you. That's usually how I felt. I just felt alone and unhappy and not sure how to parse my own emotions because they were kind of all over the place. I felt out of step with children my own age, but I wasn't quite, an adult or anything like that either. So I didn't quite fit in with them. I didn't fit in anywhere. I never felt. And that's which is a very common thing with autistic children as well, is kind of don't act their age, but don't act any other particular age either. So you're in a very nebulous spot. So I'm sure I had a little bit of that going on, definitely too, looking back, and just finding everything very too much. Everything was just too much. And I just was so sublimely unhappy, not for any particular reason. I was hyper aware of everything negative around me. I was hyper aware of everything negative in my mind. And I was just so unhappy. And that's the thing. That's what depression and mental illnesses and chemical imbalance is I could try to come up with a reason as to why I felt that way. And there's, a lot of different things that contribute, but there's also just the fact of there is a imbalance. There is a literal chemical imbalance also that my brain is just going to be wired a certain way. And problem is when you're a kid, you don't know. I didn't know what depression was what depression actually was besides just a word people used until I was like 14. I didn't know what the hell was wrong with me until before that. I just thought that I just alienated myself, which just made me hate myself more and made me retreat more because I felt broken and I didn't know what was wrong. I was constantly trying out different things so people would like me, and it never quite worked. And that's what it was. So that's why I think it's important to try to tell children what mental health is so they can know the signs in themselves. So hopefully they can get some help as well. Just not just teens and adults that need mental health support. It happens very early on whenever it's something that's biological with you. So between being neurodivergent and I have just a chemical imbalance. Now I'm on meds and it's wonderful most of the time. And it helps. It helps. It just helps balance out. I'm on 2 SSRIs. Great. It doesn't magically make everything go away, but it's a helping hand. It's something in the toolbox that when something arises, I can open up the toolbox and go like, okay, what do I have to work with here so I can more easily move past whatever's causing me some distress.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Can't imagine a 5-year-old boy holding all that emotions within him. Today, just by sharing that, I'm sure it's enlightened a lot of people, especially parents, because they're close at that age. Parents or the caregiver who's close to that child, to not just make an assumption or not to have an expectation on that child, to just somehow just behave, not to cry loudly, not to be sad, just to be happy. The toxic positivity that we're talking about is kind of ingrained into our system right from our childhood, right? You're just supposed to behave. You're not supposed to jump up and down. You're not supposed to cry, not supposed to make a tantrum. And because that's wrong, it doesn't look good. Instead of addressing what could be going on with that child, why is the child behaving that way? And talk to the child, because the child has the answers. They might express it in different ways. They might not be able to vocalize. Yes, they're only 5. They're not going to express it like the way you and I are doing it because they're little. They don't have the vocabulary for it. And even adults don't have vocabulary for a lot of feelings. There's no direct translation for each emotions we're going through. So to have that expectation that we have in the society today, to not throw a tantrum, not to cry, not to whine, creates this adult who is holding on to all that unaddressed trauma within himself or herself, and is now a grown adult, not resolved the issues that could have been resolved if it was addressed in the right way. Recognized, first of all, recognized, and addressed, we would not have had all the mental health problems we have today in this world. So listening. So from what's coming to me is that we should be better listeners and listen to cues that are not just verbal, which are expressed through behaviors and actions, and to pay attention to that, the gut feeling. Maybe the parent had the feeling that there's something wrong, but they don't want to see it. So instead, to listen to the body. And even though we don't want our child to go through that, right? We just, as parents, we want our children to just be happy. That's the wish of all the parents, because they do love their children. But it's important to accept the fact that there's something up with that child, and let me go and explore that. Let me try my best to understand that, listen, and also express our emotions in a safe place. Because if we don't, it's going to come out in negative ways. Yeah. So
Perfectly said. It's a good summation of everything today. Yeah. How's everybody doing listening? This is a heavy episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just listen and don't push things away. Don't sugarcoat. Don't try to paint over. Just go with it. Go with it. Live with it. Listen to each other. We're all each other's peers. We're all peers of humanity, as it were. So I want to thank everybody today for joining us and listening to us. I know it was a very heavy episode, but if you want to support the show, then please subscribe to us on whatever your preferred listening method is. Rate and review us. You can follow me on Instagram at @follows_his_ghost. And where can they find you and Spark Launch, Chaya?
The _ Spark Launch on Instagram, and you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook with the same name. And we're here for you.
Yes, we are here for you. Feel free to reach out, and like I said, you can find information on my groups on my Instagram page. There's also like a link tree that has all that. So reach out for us. Hopefully, we see you next time here on Spark Launch. Until then, bye-bye.